How's it going, everyone? It's Javi from Mother Sponge 5000, and in this video we're going to focus on the Atlantic hurricane season and determine if we could see Tropical Storm Lisa form in the main developed region by next week, and we'll also talk more about Tropical Storm Carl, which is expected to bring major impacts along the Mexican coastline as it makes landfall. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more what they call it. So let's begin by taking a look at the global tropics hazards outlook for the next 3 weeks, and you see that by week 2 we do have the possibility of tropical cyclone formation in the main developed region as a result of an enhanced amount of convection and rainfall occurring in the main developed region. So this will be something to keep in mind going into next week, where we do have the possibility of tropical waves moving into the main developed region and having the possibility of developing. As of right now, for the long-term outlook, it's currently around the 20% chance that we do see a tropical cyclone form in the main developed region by next week, which is still on the low end, but we have to keep in mind that weather changes quickly, the forecast changes quickly, so there is that possibility we could see that chance rise by next week if the computer models begin to detect a more favorable environment, which is certainly not out of the realm of possibilities, because keep in mind we're forecasting this over a week out where there's still a high amount of uncertainty. However, there is at least some certainty that there could be that possibility that we could see a tropical cyclone in the main development region by next week. So this is certainly something to keep in mind for the more long-term forecast. While we are in the month of October and the hurricane season does begin winding down from here, we have certainly seen powerful hurricanes develop in the month of October, so we can't underestimate this month just because the hurricane season isn't necessarily at its peak, because we still could see tropical cyclones develop in the month of October. Case in point was Hurricane Sandy, which is almost happened a decade ago now. So we definitely can't underestimate the hurricane season during the month of November. Now, taking a look at the current water vapor imagery for the entirety of the Atlantic, and there is a tropical wave located in the main developed region right here. We also do have another tropical wave that's located just south of the Cape Verde Islands, that's closer to the equator, and we also do see an enhanced amount of convection right around South America. But of course, we also see Tropical Storm Carl roaming around the Gulf of Mexico. And in terms of these two tropical waves, this tropical wave doesn't really have much of any shot of developing. You could probably tell that there's a high level of wind shear right now that's pretty much disorganizing this area of thunder showers from really converging towards each other and really developing a well-defined center of circulation. So as a result, this really has no chance of developing. Same goes for this tropical wave, at least over the next 5 days. Or could be that possibility where maybe it organizes just a little bit more as it heads for westward, but right now I'd say it's a little bit too far south to a point where it'll have enough rotation around the center of circulation, because of course the closer to the equator you go, the less of an effect the Coriolis effect will have on this tropical cyclone. So as a result, a chance that this develops over the next 5 days is nearly impossible. Maybe it increases as it heads further northwestward, but we have to wait and see. What's going to be the point of interest next week will be this tropical wave that still has yet to come off of Africa, where that may have the possibility of developing into tropical storm Lisa. So take a look at the current relative humidity forecast provided from the GFS model. So if I were to continue to move forward, we see this first tropical wave, it's pretty much not going to organize at all, as there's just going to be too much wind shear for this to really develop much. We're entering the month of October, and wind shear does quickly increase by right around the main developed region, which is the reason why most tropical cyclones during October develop right around the Caribbean, not necessarily the main developed region, because we quickly see the wind shear increase by the time October comes around in the main developed region. But there's still that possibility we could see tropical cyclones form, so it isn't necessarily impossible either. And then this next tropical wave I was talking to you guys about, we do see that the GFS model wants to organize it a little bit, which is certainly interesting. However, it doesn't really develop a tropical storm, as it just as my guess is that the wind shear would be just too strong over this storm. Taking a look at the upper level wind map, we do see that the upper level winds will be quite strong in the main development region as it heads further northwestward, where we do see the wind shear move a lot further southward than what's typical in for the main development region, as we do see that the wind shear just becomes very hostile and that prevents it from developing. And also, it's good to point out that even though there is there is like a large area of moisture, like I said, if there's too much convection surrounding it, then it's going to be difficult for it to really develop its own center of circulation that will converge that energy to that will converge all that energy towards this center of circulation, because of course we have thunderstorms that are just to the north and south of it that are trying to compete for that same energy. And if that energy is too spread out, then of course the wind speed around the center of circulation won't be strong enough for this to be considered a tropical storm, which will be another inhibiting factor along with the higher wind shear. So as of right now, it seems like the chance that this develops into tropical storm Lisa is low. However, there is potentially a higher possibility headed into even the more long-term future, where we see another tropical wave come off the Africa coast, which has a little bit more moisture, and a GFS model does strengthen it a little more than the first tropical wave. While the GFS model, I'd say, doesn't really develop a tropical storm, it's at least something to be aware of. And if wind shear ends up going in its favor, then we could potentially see tropical storm Lisa by next week. And there's still a high amount of uncertainty with this, so that's still certainly in the realm of possibilities that the conditions could become more favorable for tropical storm Lisa to develop by next week. And taking a look at what the European model is stating, the European model is a little bit less confident that we'll see tropical storm Lisa. While the European model does expect a tropical wave to come off the African coast right around the same time frame, we do see that there's a lot more stable air in the European model scenario, which of course would definitely inhibit this from having enough convection for the air pressure lower along the surface and the winds to increase a tropical storm status. So of course the European model scenario is definitely less confident than the GFS model in developing any sort of possibility of tropical storm Lisa. But again, so a lot of uncertainty. We're just going to need to pay close attention to how the computer models handle how much dry air and how much wind shear there will be, which still has yet to be seen, but it's at least something to be aware of in the main development region and potentially the Caribbean by next week, because potentially we could see that possibility arise if the conditions become more favorable, which is still uncertain at this time. But definitely keep that in mind. In terms of the 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook, the National Hurricane Center isn't, outside of Tropical Storm Carl, isn't really giving any tropical wave possibility of developing as of right now, which is a key word. But I do expect that to change beyond the 5-day mark, because it's becoming increasingly likely that the chance beyond the 5-day mark will be more conducive for tropical cyclone development in the main development region. So just because you don't see the National Hurricane Center giving any sort of possibility of a tropical cyclone over the next 5 days, that could change by next week. So make sure to just be aware of that possibility. And of course, the other thing we're going to pay close attention to is Tropical Storm Carl, which is expected to make landfall right around the right around the Yucatan Peninsula. Now, taking a look at the current how Tropical Storm Carl is looking right now, we do see that there is a heavy amount of convection going on right around center of circulation, which has been keeping this storm afloat. However, you see that the conditions aren't very favorable right now. For one thing is that the upper level winds are very strong at this time, and you could easily tell because look at how fast the clouds are moving towards the east. We're seeing the clouds move at a fairly fast clip, and a lot of the convection move on the eastern side of the eye wall. So we're seeing strong upper level winds that's somewhat disorganizing this storm from really strengthening any further. And plus, along with these upper level winds, we do see a lot of dry air, which is associated with this cold front that's moving through the eastern half of the United States at this time, bringing a lot of cool and stable air behind it, which isn't something that's unusual for the month of October, where of course we begin to see things cool down for the entirety of the United States. But it certainly does inhibit tropical cyclones from developing, which is certainly good news. And it seems like there's going to be a case with Tropical Storm Carl, as there's that possibility that this might not even make landfall as a tropical storm by the time it approaches Mexico. But whether there's a tropical storm, tropical depression, or nothing at all by the time this makes landfall, Mexico still needs to be aware that a major flood threat is likely as it moves ashore, especially a flash flood threat, because there's a lot of convection going on around center circulation despite how relatively weak it is. And even though it's just a tropical storm, they could still dump a heavy amount of rainfall. Taking a look at the upper low winds over the Gulf of Mexico at this time, we do see that the upper low winds are quite strong. Like I said, the conditions aren't very favorable for this to strengthen. It's really keeping its composure due to the fact that there's still a lot of convection going on, but there is that possibility that it could weaken just before landfall, which is certainly good news, but won't really change the impacts when it comes to flooding and rainfall for Mexico. So you still need to be aware of that major flood threat as Tropical Storm Carl moves ashore, where we do see pretty much there's a unanimous agreement that this will move south towards Mexico. This won't be a United States threat, as some feared before, as it seems like there's going to be just enough of a strong ridge that's going to be just so west of it that's going to steer this first southward. And of course, the jet stream winds will help it move a little bit further southward as well, since there's going to be somewhat of a northwesterly push that's going to push the storm further southward. So Mexico, it's pretty much inevitable you guys will receive a landfall within the next 48 hours. And taking a look at the model intensity guidance, we do see that some members do maintain this at tropical storm for quite a while, but don't really strengthen it much beyond what it is right now, which is certainly good news. But you still need to pay close attention to the flood potential associated with Tropical Storm Carl as it makes landfall towards Mexico. So taking a look at what the computer models are stating, the GFS model expects Tropical Storm Carl to really maintain its strength for the most part, not really weaken significantly, but yet not really strengthen much at all before making landfall somewhere in Mexico. And we do see some heavy rain associated with this, so make sure to pay close attention to that possibility. And with what the European model is stating, the European model pretty much agrees with the same thing, really expects Carl to maintain its strength, not really strengthen much before making landfall and bringing heavy rain throughout Mexico. And taking a look at my forecast when it comes to the next few tropical waves. So Tropical Storm Carl, of course, formed yesterday. It's going to make landfall in Mexico. Expect heavy rainfall and a potentially major flash flood threat for Mexico. And for next week, we're going to need to pay close attention to that possibility of Tropical Storm Lisa, where the outlook suggests that we could see tropical cyclone formation be more conducive by next week in the main Devon region. So we're going to need to pay close attention to that, and I'll keep you guys updated as the certainty changes over the next several days. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content, and I hope you guys have a great day.